Welcome everyone. My name is Philip, for those who don't know me. I am the founder of BTNG Studio. Besides being a creative agency, digital agency who focus on design thinking, helping our customers become more customer-centric, we're currently building a design thinking community because it is our mission to create a world in which every company truly is customer-centric. And in order to do that, we can either help all the clients in the world, which we would love to do, but is technically impossible. So we also want to make sure that actually people learn to become customer-centric and be able to help clients themselves. And as a part of that initiative, we have the BTNG community, and this event, which Max has been so kind to semi-volunteer himself for, will be a part of that. Max, I know I could probably introduce yourself, but perhaps you would like to take this moment to, before we jump in, to quickly tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, no problem. I also have a slide in the presentation that tells a little bit more about myself, but it is a little bit different. So I can tell a little bit about my background as well. I am a UX designer and a co-owner of a UX agency at the moment. We are with 9 designers working on various types of projects, working on website redesigns, web shop redesigns, but also bigger platform redesigns. Whenever there's user experience involved, we are involved. Before this, I was working at also different kinds of companies, worked at Booking.com on the bigger platform size of projects. Worked on a scale-up called Temper, which is a platform that helps people in catering find people who are looking for jobs in catering. I worked also on website redesign. So wherever there was UX, I love to do it. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. And I was greatly inspired by palm trees and cocktails. So that's the brand of Make It Max. And that's in the background as well. But I believe that the cocktails and palm trees, they really represent an experience for most people that feels like tropical and a holiday. And just as in user experience, every element kind of reminds us of an experience. And then I think those can be tokens of delighters that we also try to use within design and UX. So link to our branding as well.
Awesome. And when we connected a few weeks ago and we talked about this event, Max and I had a conversation about it is a share your work event, but we always want to find like a specific type of knowledge or a little bit of a bite that we can share with the community. And I'd love to know, Max, can you tell us a little bit about the project that you're going to tell us about and why especially you want to talk about this project?
Yeah, sure thing. So 2 years ago, we had a client, we still have the client, called Dan.com. I'm wearing the sweat today, I thought it was fitting. And that's basically a company that helps people who own domain names to sell those domain names in a secure way. But also people who are looking for a domain name. That's, exactly, that's the link in the chat right now. For people who are looking for a domain name, but it's already been bought by someone else, you can easily buy it via this platform from someone else. So it's a secondary marketplace for domain names. And there's people who have 100,000 domain names that they own, but they also want to be able to sell those to people who actually want to use those and make something great out of it. So Dan.com facilitates that and is that marketplace. So how can you manage as an investor over 100,000 domain names? But also how can you easily buy a domain name from an investor and look trustworthy in that sense from a platform point of view. It was a redesign basically for the management part of those domain names. The old interface, you will see it in the presentation. There was a lot of new features that we needed to add and that made it very complex. And that's where we really followed the UX project or the UX process from A to Z, to make sure that we have happy users. And usually redesigns are very tricky because people who are used to a certain product, they don't want to see it changed because a radical change will make us angry, as we usually see when YouTube gets an update or Facebook or whatever. You'd be like, everything is different. I don't like it. But this one actually produced a lot of happy users, and we were so happy to see that. But that means we did something right within the UX process, which also made me really happy. So I really dared to show this because we know that it made people happy, and that's what UX is about.
Awesome. You'll be taking us through that project and process in detail. Yeah. Also for the people who just joined, we will do a 10 or 3 times 10 minutes. So we have the introduction, Max will get into the story, and then we'll also have some time for questions. If you do have a burning question that can't wait, feel free to throw it in the chat. After Max has presented his case and you can just ask anything you'd like. So we'll unmute everyone. And for the people who are also in the call, if you can and want to join, feel free to also turn on your webcam. As I said, we are trying to build a community, so we'd love to get to know everyone who is here as well. So after the question round, do feel like hanging around and having a chat, feel free to do. I will do my best to monitor the chat for you, Max. I would say whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, then I'm going to share my screen, but you have to allow me first to share the screen, and then I will. Yes, cool. All right, there you go. Okay, as Philip already told you, he asked me to ask or to tell a little bit more about structuring user experience, or that's mainly the project for us. The main challenge that we faced was structuring the whole process of user experience that led to this whole redesign and made it a successful redesign, in my opinion. So that will be the overall theme of this presentation. I'm not going to go too much into what is user experience. I expect most people are familiar with user experience. If not, happy to answer questions about that later as well. And I've already introduced a little bit about what's Make It Max. As you can see behind me, we have a tiki bar and a palm tree, but basically we are a UX design agency, and we do various projects whenever there's UX involved. The more complex, the more fun, and we love it. It's a very short introduction. Then more about me, and this was the slide I was talking about. A little bit less relevant from a professional point of view, but hey, we're here for the experience, so now at least you know the useless facts about myself. This is how not to make a persona. If you ever want to make a persona, keep it with useful information, and yeah, leave out the shit.
Good points at the dentist, I see. Only 2 cavities.
Yeah, only. It's pretty fine for someone who drinks a lot of cocktails.
Yeah, that's a good score. Well done.
I'm happy with this.
Nice.
Okay, so Dan.com, as I introduced the company already a little bit, this was what the interface looked like before we started. And this is a little bit empty in the screenshot. I'll tell a little bit about it, but imagine you have a lot of domain names, 100,000 domain names. These are for mock-up purposes. You'll see the same domain name, but imagine you have a lot of different domain names. You can sell them via these icons. You can say, I want to allow people to buy this domain name right now, or to make an offer first, or to rent the domain name, for example. I want to make sure that people can buy it for this price, and they can put in an offer price that people are saying they can start offering for a domain name for like from 20 bucks. You can say, okay, anyone can make an offer, everything above 20 bucks right here. You see the monthly views and the amount of leads, so the amount of people that have contacted you and said, hey, I want to potentially buy this domain name for an X amount of money. So this was all that the investors had basically to manage their portfolio with. Now they wanted a lot of more features because it's their daily job sometimes for most people to manage a portfolio of domain names. After the redesign, kind of skip ahead a little bit and give a spoiler. This is what it looked after the redesign. There's a lot of extra information and data that was requested. We really focused on how to get that in a more readable and usable sense. You can see it's quite a radical change from the interface. So going from this, which was very bare bones, to this, which is more advanced and feels more like a cockpit for you to do your work in. And this was the tricky part as well, because most redesigns, as I told, they make people afraid, and they see the thing that changed, that worked for them, and be like, I don't really like that, I have to get used to this. But in fact, we got really positive responses, and I'll show that at the end of the presentation as well. But so for a lot of big redesigns, there's a lot of features in the background that were added, and a lot of wishes from the users. Structuring was the main problem in the UX process. And so to go from a typical UX process that looks like this, a lot of data, a lot of information from users, a lot of sticky notes, we want to go to an ultimately beautifully clean desk, which gives us a lot of headspace to think about this. So I thought, let's verb it. Structuring plus UXing, I would call it Struxing. So let's make that a thing. If you want to really make sure that your UX process is structured, you really have a lot of benefits to that, and we'll see in the presentation why. So let's start about structuring the UX process. First of all, the UX process that we started with, in my opinion, you'll see different models: double diamond model, usability engineering lifecycle models, design thinking methods. You'll see design sprints, etc. Each have their own kind of goal. Our model was a little bit like this. I'll go over it real fast. You have user research on the left side. You have, from that, you'll get user problems, like the possible pain points, etc. But you also have a business point of view that also inputs a lot of, user stories and a lot of tasks that are very useful for the business to add to their model. And all of that we'll make a roadmap with priorities on it. We'll sort that list of priorities into user stories. And from that, we can do more focused user research based on a specific user story. If we do have questions about a user story, for example, we can deep dive more into that and do more focus research on that. From that, we'll get information architecture. So we really think about the nitty-gritty of the interface. Like how can we really structure all of this data and all of this new feature requests and redesigns that we have to do. We'll test that with the users, validate it, but we'll also do company validation. So with developers, with other stakeholders like product owners, like business analysis, etc. And so we have two sides of validation, always that company side and that research side, user side, sorry. Ultimately, when there's a little bit of a loop here, so you do feedback iteration, you might test again, and then we go back to or go on to visual designing, doing the branding part over it, and we'll hand it over to developers. We are still involved in the developer handoff, making sure that developers do it the way that we intended to do. And there's a lot of things in development that also impact the user experience. So we try to really be focused on that as well. And so QA is a big process in that. Then we launch and we measure if it's going, if there's any problems. We did fix a couple of problems after going live of some users saying, hey, this just doesn't work perfectly on tablet for me yet. So we are able to also fix that. So this is a process that we globally used for this. And
especially that second user research is really nice, where you would say we would start off with more of a discovery, going broad and learning as much as possible. But then when you zoom in on more specific user stories, to be able to then in more depth specifically look for more information on that topic.
Yeah, mostly recommended, and you can see user research is a big part of this whole structure as well. Like the user side is, of course, user experience. So the user part is very important, but also skipped a lot in companies, sometimes due to budget reasons, sometimes due to companies saying, I know my user already. That's great, but maybe the design team doesn't know the user that much, or the user might change, or there's a ton of reasons why to really look for the user. So then structuring the research. So we did a lot of research, and it's very important to keep that structured, not just for your own design process, but also for afterwards. So for new people joining the project, other stakeholders, you want to make sure that everybody's in one line. You want to keep that data for the years to come, for the rest of the company as well. So we use Notion for this. Mainly if you're a Notion guru, you won't learn a lot, but it's a pretty handy tool for structuring user research, even for going into making a backlog and sprint, etc. We didn't use Notion for that part. We used Asana for the whole sprint structures, etc. But basically what we did is we made a table of participants, people who we thought were interesting for our research, that were users of the system currently. And from that, from after doing sessions with those participants, like user research sessions, we could create personas. We were able to create user stories that were directly linked to participants and personas. And we're able to later on also do user tests with this group of people that handed us the useful research information about who are they and what do they want. So how does it look like in Notion? I had to create some fictional names because we can't share personal data of users, obviously. But basically, we made a table for all those participants where we had a company name, we have a contact name at the company, the amount of domain names that they own, the status in which they are in the process, the interviewer, in this case, I'll put my own name there, but you want to add your teammates here, the personas, which will later be filled in because you need to have those discussions of the sessions first with the participants. Some comments, if there's anything coming up, you have email conversation with them. And user stories later on would also be populated right here. Now, if you, for example, have some information on someone, you can add it in a separate view here. But basically, if you send an email, you can switch the status from to invites to invite, because you'll see that those people have busy schedules as well. So it's nice to know, hey, these people I have already sent an email. I want to have a CRM system a little bit here in place to track who you've already sent an email to, who you've already had an interview with, and which one you still have to process. Because if you're done with the interview, you still need to do a shitload of work to structurize all that information and get it on paper. So if you open one of the sessions, we would, for example, have the interview script written down there. And that's a general interview structure where we go over the goals of the user interview for the people who open it in the company, check it out and be like, hey, I want to know what they're doing. A little bit of introduction for when you're doing the interview. We tell the user what's it for, why do we do this interview. We also show demographics information, so name, age, hobbies, etc. And then we go more in depth into their products, their company, and the feedback that they have. And then a little bit of a closing section as well. So after having that, we were able to make personas from those users. I hope you have less personas for purpose of this demonstration. I had a lot of personas. Yeah, ideally you want to have 3 or 4 or less the better. But basically you could add those personas here and you could link those personas to a participant in the other column. So you can make a related column right there. That makes it really easy to structure this info. And you can then also copy or create the user stories from that as well. So imagine we've now done all the personas or all the user sessions, all the research sessions. We've also done all the personas. Then we get a huge list of user stories. In this case, it was a very big list of user stories, and they were all domain investors. So you see they all start as a domain investor. I would like so that we can link every user story to participants. So who told us about this user story, who gave this feedback basically, and we can link it to a persona to make it a little bit more, you call it, narrowed down. You can also narrow your personas down a lot more if you want by specifying a user type. I forgot to say this, but yeah, if you have a lot of personas and you really can't get it more narrow than that, you can create user types to make them a little bit more narrow. Anyways, in those user stories, you can prioritize it either with Moscow. I'll have some prioritization slide as well. And we added the page for this as well, because we were doing user research. We can't tell a user like, only give us feedback about this part of the platform and nothing else, please. They will just start giving you feedback. And we do want to keep that feedback for if any other designers are working on other parts of the platform, and we can say, hey, we've got some great feedback from users, just watch it and it's right here. You can filter per page. So it's good to structure all of that. Now per user story, you can open it as well. You can click on it, you can get more context, more information, maybe a snippet. If you did your user research in look back, for example, you can export a certain highlight or a snippet. You can put it into that part of Notion to really show that context, and then all product owners can access it or UX designers can access it.
Hey Max, what also is a nice touch if you structure your user story or link them to personas. At some point in time, a client could always say, oh, you know what, this type of client, we have this big lead and we need to improve or add a few features. This is of course we need to improve the product for this type of user. Then you would also be able to filter the user story specifically for that type of persona, where you can say, these are the insights that we have and the things that we can improve for them.
Yeah, and one thing that really helped was we were able to map the feedback per user story per participant. So we could not only discuss with our product owner, hey, there is 5 users who reported this user story. So that's a very important one that most people really got with this. If it's statistically relevant, that's another discussion, of course. It is qualitative data anyways. But you have some kind of a ground to say, hey, this is a popular request for the level of research that we've done so far. But also we're able to do some stakeholder management towards the user. So when this redesign went live, I was able to just map out the user stories that were implemented in the MVP. And I was able to send an email to those users saying, hey, we've actually done something with your feedback. How many times does that happen that you send out feedback to a company and a couple of months later, you'll get an email like, hey, it's live now. Thanks for the feedback, by the way, that you gave us months ago. You'll be like, what? They actually listened to me. Nice. So that's a very important thing as well. And especially here where a couple of clients make out a big impact on the platform. Struxing the user stories. I'm going to use struxing a lot now because I feel like it's a fancy word. How can you structure this huge list of user stories? Moscow here already, and most of the people are familiar with Moscow, maybe not just the city, but also the structuring method of must have, should have, could have, and would have. And you have the RISE method. And the RISE method might have some more explanation that's needed. We use Moscow because we didn't have a lot of data to structure it with RISE. But if you're interested, if you're in a big company or you're working with a big company, RISE is a very interesting prioritization as well, where you are basically looking at the reach of a feature, the impact of a feature, the confidence of a feature, or of yourself having an impact, the confidence of having an impact with this feature, and the effort that is needed to make that feature. Based on that, you'll get your RISE score. And it's created by Intercom, so give them the props for thinking about this. There is a way to do this in Notion as well. So you could do it technically in Notion. I've researched a little bit about it, not done it myself, but should be possible. But it's quite a fancy thing. If you have KPIs or OKRs or whatever involved, mainly KPIs, if you have those, you can link them up to your user stories and really structure that together with your product owner. And that way, as a UX designer, you have a lot of, you'll have a lot of things to say in that process of prioritization, because that's sometimes an issue for UX designers. A product owner that goes, okay, I will prioritize this, that, and this. And then that's what the team is going to work on. But UX has a seat on the table as well in this case. So structuring the sitemap. So out of all of these user stories, it's now important to look at the sitemap. We've had let's zoom in on it. We have a current sitemap that was before the redesign, that was the sitemap. So we mapped out all of the pages that were there, the flows between the pages as well a little bit. How could people interact with these pages? And based on the feedback and also from the business side, the features that were needed, but also from the users, the features that they wanted, we created a new sitemap. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of this, but you can see how this redesign was quite a big thing, as a lot of things were new. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss a single thing, which could easily happen when you just start wireframing. You can't just start sketching when you have 150 user stories that you want to keep in mind. So then after this sitemap, we started structuring the interface architecture, which is basically a very holistic sketch of how can we create this interface that is most flexible for the users on a very global level. What kind of features do we place where? So we have a main navigation component right there to be easy to switch between pages. We have always a page title and a child page because we knew that there will be pages within pages. Keep that clear. We'll have search and filters that were requested. We'll have actions that go about a table. So if you are selecting a table, you need some actions always, no matter where you scroll in the table. And we have some general information that sometimes can pop up on the right side, like a wish list or those kind of things. They have platform-wide action. So we've given everything a place within this interface, which really allowed us to then narrow it down further and further without iterating and getting crazy different iterations all the time and then getting lost and then 1,000 opinions on which one looks best. We're able to narrow it down better. This was the first real iteration. You can see that we already started messing around with colors a little bit as a design system was also being created at the same time by the visual designers. Which is really nice because then we could see how it was coming together. We'd also see sometimes that if you make a wireframe and then at the last stage, convert it to a visual design, it does impact the usability a little bit. So we do want to iterate a couple of times between visual and wireframing. So this is a rough first draft, and you can see how we did keep that layout. And then ultimately we went to this layout, which in my opinion is a little bit more fine-tuned and easy. We tested it. You see some kind of things going weird with these lines. This is Figma scaling designs down, so sorry about that. We created, this is the MVP version. We also have versions for later, so the blue sky version. And now let's see about structuring the user tests, because we did user test these designs with actual users. So we tested them, and then we also used Notion to report that, or to record that user testing sessions. And again, we can map this on the same participants. We used to ask the participants in the user research, like, hey, do you want to be part of the user testing session? If we're going to actually do something with your feedback, would you like to see that? And most of them said yes. So yeah, that's how we did it. We created a separate table, again, linked them to the participants, the date. You can also link them to personas if you want, their user stories again. And that really gives it one central place to structure everything in. So then our completely filled in table of participants and sessions look like this. You have your company, contact name, domain name, status. They should all be processed now, by the way. Then you have your personas, that's all created, and the user stories that are mapped to this user. You can open these and then you'll see everything in a more structured way as well. By the way, nice to know, this was a tip from Philip. You can also make filtered views of a table. So that makes it easy to switch between views of this table. If you want to see who you have interviewed already and which interviews are processed, you can easily make that filter view. Or you can say, I want to just see people who fit within the persona UX nerd. And then yeah, you can easily switch to that as well. Yes, Philip, you are a UX nerd. If you didn't see it yet.
I noticed, yeah, I was looking if you were also in the list, but
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Give myself an easy time there. Okay, then structuring in Figma, as we all know, you get a lot of designs, a lot of different states, and developers, if you just give them a messy Figma file, they'll be like, yeah, okay, then we're going to have a difficult time.
Then we simply won't use your Figma file.
Exactly, they'll go and do stuff on themselves and prevent that. What we did is developers were using Jira. Not everybody's perfect, but no, okay. So they were using Jira, we were using Asana. What we did is we created kind of the tickets in Jira, and we mapped every ticket to, or this is an epic, we mapped an epic to a section in Figma. So we said, this is the epic number, this is the name of the epic, and under that you will see clusters of features. And so this feature was, for example, the table overview. How does it look like? And there's a ticket for that as well. So the developer could easily go through the document and be like, okay, I'm just working on this ticket right now. I'm just going to look at this little part of Figma because that's mapped to my ticket. So every ticket has a link to these, what you call it, frames as well. So this is a mapped frame and with frames within. So yeah, you can see every feature is in that way structured like this, which made it easy. We worked out everything: error states, empty states, scrolled states, loading states, etc. Not just the redesign, but every little scenario that you could possibly think of was created and was mapped. Ultimately, this is for the MVP. These were the designs that were final and delivered to the developers, which is pretty decent. We have a huge archive of all the messy stuff that we worked on and don't need anymore. We always keep it somewhere hidden. But yeah, this helped the developers a lot to find what they needed. They could place comments on the designs and we'd help them out if there's any questions. Then updating the stakeholders. Well, that was an easy peasy lemon squeezy kind of thing because the stakeholders were mapped all in Notion. So in this case, mostly the users. Now, if you have internal stakeholders, you could also map those in Notion. So you could say, hey, we have product owners or people from support who gave us feedback or whoever, and they have also given feedback. They are now in user stories and we can update those as they are live. So basically, that was a process that was mostly appreciated by the users as well. And then launch, which was a very frightening moment as any big redesign of a system that people are using on a daily basis. Someone just would redesign Gmail. You're using Gmail on a daily basis and you log in and everything is different all of a sudden. You'll be like, what the hell? Not cool, Google, not cool. And then that's basically what we were afraid of. I have scratched away the names and the profile pictures of people because if they ever want to remove a tweet, they're not on the internet for final. But you can look it up if you go to the dan.com website or a Twitter account, you can still find back those. This is not everything, there's way more. And that was the best day of the year probably for us to read this. These are actual users on the first day, on the day that it went live. We also launched a video with this. I presented in the video what we did, why we did it, which is also, I believe, something that redesign something that they use a lot. And we believe that it's a good thing to do, then at least we should make it personal and put our face there, stand for what we make. So we did that. And I believe that also helped for them to understand, okay, we really made a process out of it. And so, yeah, it was a really good feedback. And we were able to also fix a couple of critical points as well by saying which features were upcoming, because we have that list of user stories. We were able to categorize that for MVP, after launch, version 3, etc. So there's someone who said, oh no, the dreaded horizontal scroll bar. Because there's a lot of extra columns added to that table. But he was immediately correcting himself, like, I see that the table design in the roadmap, the customizing the table design in the roadmap, so phew, everything else looks great. Okay, I can see that there's a feature upcoming that I actually wanted to address, but it's already on the roadmap, so no worries. Asana does it really well. They show their features in a community kind of way, I believe, and you can see when something is going into development, I believe. It's a really fancy thing to do. But yeah, having that positive feedback, this was a major, for us, major relief. There was some critical feedback, which is always good. So we were able to address a lot of points as well. But the people who were happy about the redesign vastly outnumbered the people who were not happy about it. And people who were not happy about it couldn't really back it up. And some who could back it up, we fixed those immediately with a tablet resizing problems or something like that. Very happy about how this turned out.
Yeah, I can imagine. And releasing on Valentine's Day
as well. Yes, that's perfect timing. So yeah, with that said, everything went right. We were just chilling with a cocktail after this and hanging out between our concrete. So that's what our branding is also to. Yeah, that was a presentation about that part of it. I want to thank you a lot for listening, and I hope it was useful.
Awesome. Yeah, and of course, I'm sure that there will be some questions. Max, you already covered quite a lot of different topics from your UX process through the research, documenting it, the design, linking with development. So I think those are quite a few topics. I'm hoping that someone has the guts to go first. What did you guys think? Any questions or comments? Jeffrey, this is your time. I know Jeffrey is a colleague, so.
He was involved as well, so
I'm involved. I don't know.
I don't think he has questions.
What were some of the highlights for you in this project, Jeffrey?
Really, they use that user needs fitting in one big screen to have one overview of a table, and then adding all those features to that table and around it. That was a big thing for me to work on, and it's a nice outcome, I think.
Yeah,
Definitely. The table was a lot of struggles, but also in Figma, we made sure everything was auto layouted, for example, and everything was in a design system. So we really set up a separate design system somewhere with auto layout. So having a flexible table component is not really easy to do, or was not easy to do back in that time with the Figma. So also that technical side of designing was nice to pull off.
Yeah, cool. Amy, if I may be so bold to speak to you directly, I noticed that you have quite a decent agency background, agency history as well. How did this sound to you? Was this familiar or different to what you're used to?
Is this for me?
Oh, no, sorry, it was for Remy, but I think Remy is...
Oh, thank you. Phew.
I'd love to hear what you think as well, Amy. I think Remy is elsewhere occupied.
I'm still very new to all of this, so I'm just moving into UX research, and so there's a lot that I'm learning, but it was really cool to see how you can have the close link between your participants and your data collected and how that feeds into the user stories and personas, and that's a really cool organizational setup. So that was great. I'm going to steal that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome.
Happy to help.
Yeah, please do. That's why we do this. Wow, cool. Yeah, and anyone else? What did you guys think, or any questions?
Looks like Friday afternoon is going to be soon with drinks already.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Well, that's completely fair as well. Let's see. I see Siebert has a question in the chat. Siebert is our micless participant. I think he is very proactively typing, and I know Siebert is also nearby. Max, how did you start your career in the beginning?
How did I start it in the beginning? Started at school. So I was doing bachelor degree, human information design and strategy. So that's a very broad education. You get a lot of topics in that study. And in my opinion, that fits user experience a lot because that's also a very broad topic. There's also a lot of things covered in that, from research to designing to psychology and all the things around it. So that was the starting point, and that I didn't know about user experience in the starting years, but from year 2, I learned out about user experience and what it was. I was already making designs, like visual designs and websites and developing as well. But then I learned there's more to it, and also you can work on these more complex projects, which I loved. I started just doing more work on the side as a freelancer, but also I started just knocking on doors of companies like, hey, can I just do work for you guys? And it doesn't have to pay very well, but just want to learn more. And that kind of grew me into that role within the education. And then, yeah, I got an internship within UX. After the internship, got another internship in UX, then started at Booking, and that kind of got it rolling. Did it answer your question? I guess so.
A few questions from Misaki, so this is cool. What is the most important thing you learned from this project? The first question.
So most important learning from this project, good question, very good question. I have to dig back into my memory again a little bit about the learnings. There was a lot of learnings about stakeholders, a lot of people being involved, and how to carefully also move around in that space, because there's a lot of knowledge already in the company. There's also a lot of knowledge with the users, and you want to respectfully use both of them. So to balance that, it was very interesting. So that made it also very important for us to present those user feedback to the people in the company in a way that that we didn't get a response of, yeah, no shit, Max, we already knew this. So sometimes that happens. So that was a very important. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Did you also have, because what I sometimes encounter is that when people work at an organization for a long time, so they believe that some things are a specific way, but it's not necessarily proven. Did you have to deal with that in this project as well?
Definitely. It was a scale up. People there for a long time who genuinely know the industry very well, which is very important. But the industry also changes, or people might have different feedback. There is a lot of convincing involved there, that's for sure. So stakeholder management, I think, but that's within any company. It's the most dynamic, difficult thing, because it's more of a social side that you have to then be careful with. But the people at them were really great, were really helpful, and they were very supportive in this, which also made it easy. So the challenging part was more like looking towards doing it, and then after doing it, it's okay, nice, that was actually good to do. And then also a very challenging part was the developer handoff. Even though we structured everything very well, developers were very much asking a lot of good questions. And sometimes they ask a question about a scenario that we didn't even think of in the design phase yet. We did try while designing to include developers into it as well. But you also see that you created it, it's finished. You say to the developers, all right, now it is good to go. Let's run it. And then they'd be like, yeah, but wait a second. What if user clicks this, does that, and then goes there? And you're like, yeah, okay, give me another week and then we'll have it figured out.
It's a really cool Marvel series on Disney, but when you hear it in your project, what if? Then, okay, yeah. We've got scenarios incoming.
Yeah, exactly. It can't be that the Iron Man suit was just working first time immediately.
Yeah, the last one, the unexpected. I think then maybe if you have a specific example of scenarios that you didn't expect.
Scenarios that I did not expect. Ooh, that's also a good one. I definitely did not expect the people to be so happy about the redesign. But it's not a challenge so much, is it? So no, I don't think that was a major issue. It's not the case. It was a little bit challenging if you want to. I think the developer handoff, that was unexpected. You think that the design is fully complete. You think, all right, now it's all good. Let's ship it to development, and they have been involved. So it's not just you're going to throw it to development and good luck with it. But it is like we didn't expect so many comments, and then they do have questions logically, but we're also working on new things, and then you have to jump back into that project again. So that kind of got some stressful situations where we just had to do it quickly before the sprint started.
Cool. For now, we are exactly on time. Max, I do want to thank you one more time for sharing this project and all your insights with us. The recording will be shared on YouTube and in the community. For the people who are new and or have just joined the BTNG community, there is an introduction section there as well. We'd love to know who you are, what you're doing, and especially what you would like to learn, so we can actually, create content for that. We'd love to know what's going on and which challenges you might be facing. So feel free to join the community, introduce yourself, and if you have any ideas for another event, feel free to share them. Also, if you are interested in getting more experience as a workshop facilitator, I'd love to know what type of workshop you would like to try out, because we actually offer people the opportunity to say, I would like to run an ideation workshop, but I'm not really confident about it yet. I want to do like a test run or a dry run. We can actually gather a few people that you can facilitate your workshop and get a bit of experience under your belt that way as well. So thanks to everyone for joining, signing up, and I hope to see you next time. And once again, Max, thank you. Any last words from your side?
No, thanks everybody for joining. Really, really great. Misaki, I'll let you know, asked a little story also with a question on it. I'll follow up on it, but thanks everybody for joining and for listening in. I hope it was useful. If you do have any questions later on, always feel free to ask on any channel. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Maybe that's the easiest. But feel free to shoot a message, and always happy to think and help out where needed.
All right.
And
Friday afternoon, Max?
Yes, Friday afternoon, the cocktail bar is open.
It's Friday again. No, we made it. Everyone, have a great weekend. And for the people where it's really early, have a great day. And after that, a good weekend as well.
All right.
Bye-bye.